Wow, here we go, everybody. Welcome to the first ever episode of the Real, Raw and Relevant show with me, your host, Locky McNeill. And I hope we're going to have a great time together. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's a huge honour to have you in our little home studio we've got going on here. So before we kick things off, just to let you know what we've got happening tonight, we have an interview with our very special guest, JuliaGrace, coming to us from Auckland, because Auckland's obviously in lockdown. We can't do it in person, but we've got the technology to make that all happen. She's also performing for us, which is a real treat, so looking forward to sharing that with you. We've got some doco footage that we've been collecting on the topic and the theme that we want to talk about with you tonight, and a bit of brief commentary from me. So hang in there, stay with me, we're going to have a really good time. Here comes the stinger. Well, I thought to set the scene, you might be wondering why this is called the Real, Raw and Relevant show. And to be blunt, I want us to have some conversations. And I'm not saying that I'm an expert on everything, but I am pretty passionate about life and figuring things out. And I love conversations that are real, they're raw and relevant, and that's my promise to you. Whenever we do one of these, they're always going to be those three things. You hold me accountable to that. Unless it's real, raw and relevant, we ain't going to talk about it. I don't want to have anything to do with it, because our world needs great conversations right now, devoid of everyone screaming and yelling at each other, but at least we're actually having some good conversations that are going to help us in life. Now, I would love to hear from you. Feel free, I see people doing it already. We've got people making comments there. Say hi, say where you're from. Give us a bit of a shout out. Like, share, whatever it can do to kind of get the message out there. I'm kind of keen to spread the word about what we're doing here. It'd be really, really cool. And also, if you want to get in contact with us, we'll post this up a little bit later as well. Email the show at Locky@templeproductions, all one word, .nz. We'll share a link to that a bit later on as well, so you can do that. So share your comments, maybe make some suggestions about what you'd like to see on the show. I'm sure once we carry on with it, you'll get where I'm kind of going with all this. And again, just say hi in the comments. I'm seeing a whole bunch of cool people that I know out there. Someone called Ash, good mate in Invercargill, epic intro. Well, that was the idea. Kind of got to get to set the scene kind of well and doing the best we possibly can with it, which is really, really cool. Tonight, so what we're doing is we're kicking off this whole series of episodes, starting about a conversation around mental health. Now, end of this month, this is September in New Zealand when we're first airing this. End of September in New Zealand is Mental Health Week happening in New Zealand. This is a topic that's dear to my heart. It became even more dear to my heart last year from some things that we went through as a family and the journey that we've been on. And again, this is not going to be some cathartic thing so I can just tell you all about my thoughts. I really want to help us have some good conversations, and we're going to have some conversations beginning tonight about mental health. And over the next few episodes we've got coming up, we've got planned, we've got some great interviews and conversations we're going to have around this kind of to help us. So tonight, this hopefully will help you if you're on a little bit of a journey in this regard. I know for some of us, it hasn't been the easiest of seasons, and maybe your health or mental health has been feeling a little bit challenged. Maybe you know someone in your life who's really wrestling with a few things at the moment. Maybe some things that we talk about tonight could be a huge help in this season. Now, before we get into our interview with Julia, which is getting all set up, all ready to go right now, I've been watching a whole lot of stuff from around the world talking about this issue, and especially in regards to the relevancy right now of COVID and lockdowns. And so I've grabbed some footage from a few different docos and some different providers like A Current Affair and from the BBC. So we're going all around the world with this right now. Just a real short short clip before we have our interview with Julia, kind of just to set the scene for you. So check this out.
Shadow pandemic, the devastating blow COVID is having on our mental health. All the restrictions and the lockdowns are taking a toll. And while it is confronting, it is critical that the true cost on individuals, on families, on all of us is taken seriously. Patrick McGorry is a pioneer in mental health care. I spoke to him and epidemiologist Tony Blakely a short time ago. Professor McGorry, how badly is it impacting mental health in Australia? What are you seeing, what are you hearing on the front line of this?
Well, we're definitely seeing a surge. We did modelling last year and predicted a 30% increase in need for care, and especially in young people, and that's definitely what we're seeing in the only data source we can really reliably depend on, and that's emergency department presentations, which have surged in this age group, teenagers and young adults in particular, because their morale has suffered a lot. They may not need mental health care per se, but there's been a loss of morale, and that means that the people trying to support those vulnerable to mental illness are also really pretty exhausted, and that's having flow-on effects. Teachers, health workers, parents, all of those people who are the support systems are really starting to go under.
And we're seeing that play out too in Lifeline and the Children's Helpline. They've never seen anything like it, people reaching out for help in record numbers.
30-year-old Christopher Ilden, who had no history of mental health issues, had taken his own life. He died in hospital with his family by his side.
And I was holding his hand and I was talking to him. I had a go at him, told him I loved him, and I gave him a kiss on the head, and I just laid my head on his chest, and just hearing his heart beating for the final time.
In the months before his death, Christopher posted a series of messages on Facebook about his struggles with the lockdown.
The real pandemic is mental health, that people, especially the younger generation, are struggling with. Everything they've ever known has just been taken away, and then there's a new set of rules.
There's no denying that the lockdown is saving lives, but behind closed doors, up and down the country, people are struggling to cope. We've been contacted online by relatives who believe the lockdown may have led to the deaths of their loved ones. This message here reads, "I'm 100% sure my partner would still be here if it wasn't for lockdown. Another, our son, took his life in May, and the coroner recorded that the lockdown played a significant role."
Students have long been prone to stress, anxiety, and depression. According to the CDC, 3 out of 4 Americans between the ages of 18 and 24 report poor mental health tied to the pandemic.
Well, joining us right now, we have the extreme pleasure of having JuliaGrace. Say hello to everybody, Julia.
Hi, everyone.
So I got a little bit of a blurb I want to read out about you. I stole it from your Facebook profile. I decided to get it right. Okay, so you're an award-winning performing artist, and I can give a big tick to that because I've seen Julia perform I don't know how many times now. Public speaker, and the reason why I really wanted to get to talk to you today because you're a mental wellness advocate. I wanted to get those words right. Is it really important that I get those words right?
Those are super important. I think the way that we phrase them doesn't matter, but the fact that it's a huge part of my world and part of my heart is important, and I know for you as well.
Yeah. And that's right. I'm so excited to have you here because I understand this end of this month is Mental Health Awareness Week that's coming up. This is a subject that's been really dear to our heart, not because it's just been recent, not just because of what if everyone's seen just before you've come and joined us today. I just think it's really important we get these things right as best we possibly can, kind of realising, I guess, we're never going to get it perfect because we're human beings, aren't we? So we're doing the best we can. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I like to say, you know, we're turning up, we're having the kōrero, we're having the conversation. We do our best. And sometimes we will have discussions of things and we'll look back later and be like, oh gosh, I've learned since then or I've experienced since then. But that's okay because on the day our heart was in the right place. So I think we're on a good track.
Cool. Well, look, you're cheering us up already because you're looking all bright and cheerful, all that top on and everything. It's all exciting.
Gotta wake myself up.
Yeah, that too. Hey, so I've just got a couple of questions just to kind of get the conversation going. If it leads somewhere else you think is important, then please just, I'm not the boss here. We're just having a talk, so it's really cool. So I guess the loaded first question would be, do you think mental health is getting better or worse, or are we just talking about it a whole lot more?
It's such a good question, and it's one that I think about a whole lot. Actually, I'm often asked this question. I think the answer is yes, yes, and yes. And so in some ways, we are becoming more aware of some of the details of our mental health. Right. And I'm so delighted to be able to say that, people who are going through midlife, what we used to term midlife crisis, are actually identifying that we're probably burning out. Mm-hmm. People that have had small children and are having what we call the baby blues are actually dealing with postnatal depression. And, people that are in these different phases, women in menopause who we used to say they're having a breakdown, we're now understanding they're probably dealing with, mild or even extreme forms of depression and anxiety. So I love the fact that we're getting better at identifying what's going on. So yes, is it getting worse? In some ways, I'm going to say yes, because I feel like we are doing a lot more of our life in our head. Mm-hmm. Now, what I mean by that is, 50 years ago, you would have been out ploughing the field, I don't know, farming on the shores of Lake Taupo. I might have been out picking fruit or, doing the things that you used to be able to do. And physically, we would tire ourselves out. We're doing a lot more up in our brain. And so therefore, we're putting a lot more pressure on our brain. So I think we're having some more emotional responses. And are we just kind of staying the same? I think human beings remain the same to time immemorial. We still deal with the same stuff as life goes on. So lots of different ways.
So, I mean, something that's been considered, and we were just looking at it before you came on, the impact of COVID-19 and lockdowns. And I don't want to get into a conversation about whether we should have lockdowns or not, and that we shouldn't do them because it's bad for our mental health. But this is recognising that maybe that actually has had a negative impact. Have you seen that? Is that something you've noticed or picked up on?
Yeah, and once again, it's a mixed response. So some people thrive in being let out of their office where they're driving an hour a day to get there and sitting for 8 hours and being allowed to work from home and spend a bit more time, in the garden and doing those things. There's some benefits to having a break from the everyday life, but also there've been some people who have absolutely had huge negative impacts from feeling dislocated or disconnected from their group, from their society, and certainly for people who are living at home in challenging relational situations, locking you down with a toxic relationship isn't going to help anybody. So definitely pluses and minuses, but I can see identifying that it is a pain point and a challenge, I think, is really wise.
So I've been thinking about, even just the way that we get information now. So, we are locked down, but then we're bombarded with everything that reinforces why we're locked down. Mm-hmm. And I guess there'll be some people who thrive again on, they love the information, but others who find it just so distressing that every day it's just bad news, waiting for the numbers of how many cases are coming out, how many people are in hospital. That you're getting news from all around the world. If you're a news junkie like me, have you heard of people really struggling with that maybe a little bit more, or anything you'd like to say about that, or maybe even recommend to people
absolutely
who wrestle with that stuff? Yeah,
totally hear you on that one. And I think it's the thing is that we got COVID, but we've had we've had Afghanistan, and we've had America over the last year, and beginning of last year we had Australia on fire, and we've had all these things. Where I live in West Auckland, we've had floods and terror attacks and all these things going on. And I think that different people's capacity to absorb that news is going to be different. And I think one of the things that I'm encouraging people to do is to actually notice. So listen to your body and notice. If you are a news junkie, you're used to, absorbing a lot of stuff and that information, it probably won't kick you in the guts as much as someone who's genuinely not had a lot of exposure to international news and now is suddenly tuning in on the daily. The other day in the Herald, somebody popped in a nice article saying that the Harbour Bridge is structurally unsound and only going to last another few years. I was like, dude, do you have to bring that up now? Like, seriously, it's like they're waiting in the wings with some more bad news. So I really do encourage people to notice what's going on. If you come away from a news update feeling high levels of stress, if your heartbeat's going up, you've gone off into fight or flight mode and you're starting to panic, I'd highly recommend that you maybe don't need to be absorbing as much of that news as you are. We don't need all the details. We don't need to hear everything.
Well, because it's non-stop, it's not like you're missing out. I think sometimes we feel like we're going to miss out if we don't tune in at 1 o'clock. We've missed out the news, but look, I've got a phone just like everybody else, and next minute NZ Herald Online's firing notifications onto my phone. You're not actually missing out, isn't it? We're so preconceived idea, I don't even have the right words for it, don't want to miss out on what's going on in the world. And
exactly, don't want to miss out on the good stuff. And I think what we need to understand is actually that, you know, news media, now media's taken a hammering and a beat up, you know, for this stuff, and I don't think that's fair in many senses. But news is there to create, you know, to make money for its companies, and so their job is to constantly have to be making news. Now that doesn't mean I think it's a big conspiracy and they're lying to us, because I don't. But I do think that their job is to string out any piece of news for as long as possible. So like you say, maybe once a week we're getting a big announcement, something that's really, you know, to do with lockdown levels, or something that's really going to affect us, perhaps, you know, what happens next week. But every day, that's probably not going to affect us. So if you're finding that stressful, you're not going to miss out. And trust me, you're going to hear it from about 10 other sources. If anything interesting happens,
well, if you're on social media, everyone's trying to tell everybody else the news before everybody else, but we've already heard it. So anyway, everybody's a news reporter. So now I've had the pleasure of hearing you speak a few times on mental wellness and all that sort of stuff. And I actually took notes, which is a tick for me, just pat myself on the back here. So I wanted to kind of bring out a couple of things that I noticed that meant something to me, kind of struck something in my imagination. And you share some analogies sometimes when you're presenting, and you talked about our minds and our bodies together, like how when one's broken, I don't want to say too much because I'd rather you talk about it, but you talked about a broken ankle and our minds. So how does that work, that analogy? I'd really love you to share that with everyone.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for taking notes, Locky. I feel very special. And I always feel nervous when people say, I heard you say something 10 years ago. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what did I say? But I do love this analogy. You know, when we put pressure on our bones, they can break. And nobody gets all weird about it. Nobody judges us. Nobody goes all spiritual on us or starts trying to, you know, cast the side eye on what we've been doing wrong or saying that there's something going on. We simply understand that when you put the body under pressure, there's a point at which it can't handle anymore. And actually, you know, we're not Superman, we're not Superwoman. And I use that analogy to remind us that when we put our brain under pressure, because our brain is simply part of our body, when we put our brain under pressure, the reactions and the responses can be really similar. So it's like these cut-off points, these shutdown points, you know, and when we put someone under pressure and they end up with their foot in a cast with a sprained ankle, we all run around and say, oh, poor thing, how can I help? When we put our emotions and our adrenaline, you know, adrenal glands under so much pressure that we start to burn out and our brain starts to shut down and our body refuses to do the things that we're used to it doing, somehow there's a stigma that comes with that says, oh, I don't know if that's really a problem, and maybe if you just got up and, you know, suck it up, buttercup, and harden up, and we come against these issues where the challenges, that the health challenges that we have are not visible, and so they can be harder to actually talk about and identify. And one of the ways of actually comparing that is other people who have, maybe people with, say, back problems or acute pain, and they have got so used to just pretending it's okay because it's been going on for so long and it's so painful and there's no cast and there's no Band-Aid and there's no bandage, but they've just kind of gone, yeah, well, okay, I'm used to living with this level of pain, but it doesn't mean that they're not in pain. So I think I try and bring this analogy of the physical and the mental to understand that the two are not separate, but they're both physical.
And it's still,
really,
it's still our bodies, isn't it? You still carry it with you no matter what type of injury it is. So, yeah. And I suppose that's why I'm pleased that we're getting to talk, and that it is in, I suppose, our culture that we do talk about it a whole lot more. And maybe that's part of the key, that we need to talk. I guess part of my concern is that sometimes you can talk about all sorts of things with not a lot of outcome or a lot of, progression in it. We just ended up identifying an issue. So again, that's why I like hearing people who've got great suggestions on what to do next. And maybe that leads into one of the questions I had for you. So if someone today tuning into this is going, look, I actually do recognise that maybe I have some mental wellness challenges, what would be the first thing you suggest that they do?
Yeah. And so there's a couple of ways of looking at this. So one is that the crisis, the moment of crisis. So if someone is tuning in and listening to us today, there are crisis. There's help. So if you text 1737 on your phone, you will get connected to 24/7 counselling. Somebody who will just be there for you and be there with you. And I think we both know that sometimes those moments of real extreme, I've come to the end of myself, just having a voice on the end of the line or someone on the end of the message can be enough for us just to let some of our thoughts out. 741 741. You can call them and you can either call or text. And once again, there's crisis counsellors and there's people who can help you in a variety of ways. So that's kind of at the extreme end of, I don't know who else to talk to. There's somebody to talk to. I can
there's always someone out there now, isn't there?
Yeah.
You don't have to be on your own.
And they're not there for fun. They're there because they really want to help. And they'll do their best to help you. On a more practical, on a more simple level, one of the things that I really advocate for is actually, unfortunately, a little bit of a step back. It is the pre-planning. Because I reckon we get insurance for our car, we get insurance for our house, and sometimes we even get insurance for our pet, but we don't make any insurance or planning for our mental health. We don't put a first aid kit in place. We don't ever think, today's fine, but what about tomorrow? There will be a tough day. There's going to be a day where every single person is going to be dealing with some area of a mental wellness spectrum. You may end up in a situation where it's a diagnosed mental illness, or you could be way back where it's just a bit of stress and pressure and you're feeling like you need support. And those are all part of that same spectrum. And so one of the things that I do is encourage people to plan ahead, which doesn't probably help your answer there too much. But I do have a couple of little things that I use here. So
cool. Go for
one
it.
of these is, I'll get this in front of there, is to recognise your wobbly point.
Okay.
Yeah. Whenever we get these, the older we get, the more of these we have, obviously, wobbly points. But, Locky, wobbly points is actually where we can identify that something is wrong inside of me, inside my brain, inside my emotions. I don't really know what's wrong, but I'm just not feeling great. And so being able to talk to someone about the fact that you're feeling a bit wobbly, what that means is we can use a language that's fun. It's not too dramatic. It's not like, hey, I need psychotherapy. It's just like, hey, actually, I'm a bit wobbly. If we'd met today and I'd said to you, hey, great, great to be here. I'm a bit wobbly today. You would probably treat me with a bit care, with care, knowing that I've identified that something's wrong. The cool thing about the wobbly point is I don't need to know why, how, what your mother said when you were 7, what you had for breakfast. All I need to know is that you're not feeling maybe too great today, and actually understanding that language can be put around that. And from that comes this little thing called the Jelly Buddy.
Oh, look at that.
And this is so your Jelly Buddy is thinking about who in your world could you make a pre-arrangement with and commit to that if you're feeling wobbly, you would reach out to them. Now, you might only have 1 or 2 people. This is not for everybody. This is actually just for some trusted people who will get it, like zero judgment people. And on the back I've written here what being my Jelly Buddy means. And what it says is, being my Jelly Buddy means I'll let you know when I'm feeling wobbly, and I'll listen if you notice that I'm wobbly, because sometimes I can't tell. And I'm committing that you can support me by checking in, hanging out, or getting help. So my heart for this is that on the days when things are good, we can have this kind of conversation, and say to someone, look, I can guarantee you, if you've got breath in your lungs and a brain in your head, you're going to hit a day when you need a jelly buddy. But if you don't have one up your sleeve, it's going to be hard to have that conversation. Because when we're under pressure, stressed out brains are offline brains. Practical problem solving is not our strong point when we're feeling under pressure. And so that's why I've made these grabbable words so that people can talk about it. They can sit down with their family, they can make a jelly for pudding. They can talk to their kids and say, how would I know if you were at your wobbly point? What would your body be telling me? What are some of your signs? And have those conversations. And who would you reach out to?
That's good.
And so what it means is that the person who needs the help can find someone to get them help. But also people outside of that have permission to come in and step in at that time, because I don't know about you, but there have been times when I've needed help and my answer is, I'm fine.
Yeah, that's probably the most overused phrase, especially around in different groups that we've had involvement with over the last few years. Yeah. How are you today? Oh, I'm great, even if your world's fallen apart. Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. So actually going, we will need, it's not like maybe you're going to have a rough day. You will. You're going to, the only maybe is how many.
Now, is this kind of like a counterculture thing? I'm noticing this a lot, that sometimes the solutions to our biggest problems are actually completely different to the culture we've put ourselves in. So what I mean by that is, hopefully I explain this well enough, a lot of our world is filled with lots of people, lots of things, lots of activity. There's this go, this stuff all the time. And if you're not doing that and you don't have that, there's something wrong with you. But the reality is, when our mental health falls to bits, you don't want that, do you? For me, in the journey we've been on, I've actually found I don't want 1,000 friends anymore. No. I want 1 or 2. Because number one, I can't cope with any more than that. And they're the only people I don't trust to share what's going on in my heart with thousands of people. But if there's someone offline and private I can talk to. So I love the idea of that, you're being prepared, that you have your jelly friend, whatever you're calling it there, that you could go, hey, now's my time. I need to talk. We've made this arrangement. I think it's fantastic. So, yeah.
I'm cashing in my car. Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you say there, because, earlier this year I had a massive anxiety episode.
Right.
This is not something that it's like done and dusted and I'm all better. And I had to pull every tool out of my tool belt, all the things that I preach, all the things that I tell people to do, I was using to bring me, I don't talk about fighting or winning or battling or, overcoming. It's simply maintaining, it's managing and dealing with it like any other health issue. I want to manage it well. I want to deal with it well. I want most days to be really normal, and then on the days when it's not, I want to have the tools in my tool belt. And so I'm very much like you. I will run and I will hide and I will ghost and I will ignore and I will just tuck down into myself, and my head will begin to spin and I won't tell you. So that's where it's important that people have had permission to step into my world. Michael and I both he's dealt with real major burnout, and I deal with depression and anxiety. We've both had turns at being the other person in the doctor's office, sitting there supporting. Well, one of us is like, oh, I'm fine, and the other's going, they're not fine. I like to say we take turns at being crazy. To have that other person to sit there and go, get in the car, babe. We're going to the doctor. This is whatever's happening here is not working. We need to get that support. Been to the counsellor, been to the therapist, been to those things. And there's no shame in that. But I think it's so much easier if you've had the conversation in advance. Because I'm fine, I need help. Yeah. Is a really good transition.
Now, see, that's where this gets interesting for me as well. So we're talking about us, like you, me, people who are really close to us, maybe have that prearranged relationship that, they've got her back and will help us. There are other people that we all probably know that have got some mental wellness issues that you're going, man, I really want to help, and they don't look like they want help. Maybe this is a tricky question to ask, but I'm just curious if you've got like something that you would suggest or something you've noticed that's maybe worked for others on how you help someone across the line so they can begin that journey, overused phrase again, to mental wellness. Like, how do you get them to want to get the help that they desperately need, but are pushing you back from giving or helping them with.
Yeah, softly, and practically. And, I sometimes say treat them like they're sick in bed in a body cast,
Great.
but are telling you they're fine. And you would, now we both probably know some people who would be sick in bed with a body cast, who would be saying, I'm fine, I don't need help, stumbling around, and yet we would just ignore them, right? We would turn up, we'd be like, don't be stupid. I'm arriving and I'm bringing muffins. We would turn up in their world, but we wouldn't turn up and be like, oh, you idiot, what are you doing walking around? We'd be like, you're amazing. Look at you trying to walk, but I'm going to sit down, And so I think it's really important that when people are in mental distress, we be super kind. We are in a phase of our mental health that we're not up to big cerebral theological discussions. We don't want you clapping hands on us and declaring that this should be happening or that should be happening. All we want is really simple, soothing, almost childlike, in a really nice way, childlike treatment. All we want for there is just to, in as many ways as possible, tell that person that their life is not in danger. Now, that could be with your hands, that could be with your voice, that could be with your text message, that could be with your visiting, that could be with coming and just going for a walk around the garden, just or even the tone of your voice can help their central nervous system just to calm down, just to say, look, they feel like their life is in danger because they're in that distressed state, and actually just soothing and calming. One of the things I love to do is I call a stop, drop and solve.
Right.
So stop, drop and solve is where you have gone into, your brain is going into that your amygdala's firing, you're in a very emotional state and you feel like it's all a bit much. You might be starting to feel like you're going to cry or get angry or really retreat. And so doing some problem solving activities is really, really helpful to calm your brain. So stop, drop whatever it is you're doing, and doing something like a puzzle, a Sudoku, dig a hole, climb a ladder, maybe not a good time to climb a ladder, climb a tree, go for a walk, just something really, really simple, but that their brain can actually go, I can do this.
Yeah.
I get
and
this.
isn't that the opposite of how we naturally want to do things, isn't it? Like, especially if you're a go-getter, A-type personality, you feel your world falling apart, so what you do is you just dig in harder. Like, I'm going to battle my way through this, and
I can do it.
Yeah, and if I just fight hard enough, I'll push my way through this and come out the other side. And you've probably seen it, just I've experienced it myself. It don't work like that, so stop it.
No.
Just be kind
we want
to
to wind
yourself.
ourselves up, and we should be winding ourselves back down. A friend of mine came over to visit, and I was like feeling really stressed, and I was telling her all about my tragic tale of woe and my heartbreak and all this. And she said to me, she goes, how old were you when you realised that, can't even remember what the question was, but it was interesting because my brain, which had felt so attacked and so vulnerable, and was suddenly like, good question. And then I go into a little filing mode, and a little bit of problem solving, it just helps us to relax and take us right at that emotional point of view, just as something that and it's just distracting as well.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much. This is awesome. To be blunt, we could talk about this for hours. I've got more questions, as you know, because I sent you some ahead of time. And so we probably, because if someone's watching this, they don't want to sit here for 55 minutes if they're going, I need to go and change up things right now. So number one, I want to thank you because you've been a great help for myself, people that I've related to over the years, being someone who's out there actually talking about all this. So thank you so much for joining us here today, and whenever someone's actually watching this on YouTube later and all that sort of stuff. So thank you for joining us. Now, before everyone disappears, we've got a bit of a treat from you, haven't we?
We do.
We do. So Julia has kindly let us share one of her songs. So after we've finished up this little interview now, stick around. I'm going to come back and wrap up this time soon. But come back and we're going to be actually sharing with you one of her songs, and I'll do a bit of a wrap up. But before that happens, hey, thank you so much once again. You've been a huge help for probably a whole bunch of people. So thank you so much. I can't say thank you enough, can I? So
Pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks, Julia. Wow, that was awesome, wasn't it? I feel kind of silly because I realised I've said thank you to Julia. I don't know how many times, and now I've just mentioned it again. So hey, don't stone me. I got that a little bit wrong. Hey, but I just wanted to wrap things up before we close off the show. And I think if you're down, or I've used the other D word, depressed, any of those kind of things, like we've mentioned in that interview, it came out quite strongly there. I don't think you want complicated. I don't think you're looking for the 10 steps to wholeness or whatever it might be. You don't want a crowd. Simple is always best. So if you're out there right now and your mental health or wellness is not where you think it should be, hey, be kind to yourself. It's an overused word saying be kind, but you need to be kind to yourself. Simple is best. A little bit of advice I give you. I wrote it down so I don't say it wrong. Try not to look to the crowd, just look for someone. Don't look for a mass of people to get you out of the hole that you're in. Just look for that possibly one person, one point of contact that could make a difference with you right now. And I'll just give you a couple of suggestions. One could be a friend. Reach out to that one friend that you have, that your jelly buddy, as Julia amazingly put it. Reach out to your jelly buddy and say, hey, I'm calling in that favor right now. I really need someone to talk to. If you don't have someone like that you can talk to, Julia mentioned it, text 1737. Text 1737. They're professional counsellors on the other end of the line. They're not going to harass you or do anything that you're going to feel uncomfortable about, but you can have a text conversation. Reach out to that someone. Maybe that's what you feel comfortable with right now. Do never be ashamed of going to your doctor and saying, hey, I need some help. That's something that my wife and I have learned over the years. There are moments when we need a doctor for our bones and for our brains, and you will not get any judgment from someone like me and blow what everyone else thinks. Your wellness is way more important than that. And finally, please don't be offended by this one if this is not your thing, but for me, another someone that I reach out to is God. prayer has really helped me through the time that we've been through, and maybe that could be helpful for you. Now, if you've got any questions about that, please, like we've mentioned before, just email the show, and we'd love to help you with any of what we've talked about tonight. It's all okay. Maybe you've got some questions or suggestions about future shows around mental health. We'd love to hear from you. So again, if you really liked what we've been sharing, talking about, doing, what we're trying to actually achieve here, you probably picked up on this real, raw and relevant show we're wanting to do. Please always like, share, comment. I love the fact you guys have been making some amazing comments there. I'm looking forward to reading them all properly after the show. If you'd like to support us, is the only time I'm going to mention it tonight. If you'd like to support us in any way, if you just go to buymeacoffee.com/Locky, we'll put a link up a little bit later for that. You can buy me a coffee, and that will help do what we're trying to do here. And so feel free, again, email the show. We'd love to hear from you. Just to wrap it all up, hey, look after yourselves. God bless, and thank you so much for joining us here on our very first show. So cool to have you with us. Hey, catch you soon.